This video marks the beginning of a series where we'll explore developing a simple online game using SignalR and React. In this video, I'll cover the following topics. Firstly, I'll demonstrate how to create a .NET Core Web API application using the command line. Next, I'll guide you step by step on how to work with the database. Let's start coding. Alright, so step 1. Let's create a .NET Web API application. With this command, I'll be making the Web API application, and TicTacToe.service is what I'm naming the project. Head over to the TicTacToe.service folder. Open Visual Studio Code in this folder. I'm starting by creating a Models folder. Inside that, I'll make a file called user.cs to set up the user model. First off, I'll assign each user an ID, a username, and a password. Before we add migrations to the SQL server, we need to install some packages to the project. The first package we need is Entity Framework Core SQL Server. Since we're using .NET Core version 8, we'll install all the necessary packages with version 8 as well. The second package we'll need is Entity Framework Core Tools. Additionally, I'll install the Entity Framework Core package. Next up, I'll install the Entity Framework Core Design package. To create the database context, I'll start by making a context folder. Then, within that folder, I'll create the DB context file. I'll create a public class named TicTacToe DB Context, inheriting from the DB Context base class of Entity Framework Core. I'll add a DB set of users, utilizing the user class, and specify the name of the table inside the database as users. This users set will be used to communicate with the database. Before migrating these user settings to the database, we must set the connection strings for the database. In this project, I'll be using SQL Server, so I'll provide my SQL Server connection strings. If you're using a password-protected server or a different type of database, please adjust the connection string values accordingly. To add the connection string, I'll utilize the app settings JSON file. Before editing the app settings JSON file, let's first find out the connection string for the server. I'll connect to my SQL server to obtain this information. I'll name the connection string SQL Server str, and set its data source to the SQL Server connection string. Initial catalog will be the name of the database for this project. To add the migration to the database, we first need to configure it. This involves adding the DB context to services with our DB context, which is TicTacToe DB context. Additionally, we need to provide the options for the DB context. In this project, we're using SQL Server, and the connection details are defined in the app settings JSON file. To migrate this to the database, we'll need to add some packages. In this project, we'll use all the packages from the local folder. To do this, we need to initialize the tool manifest. Then, I'll install .NET F version 8 to the local folder. .NET F is primarily used to manage migrations and interact with the database in .NET Core. For the initial migration, I'll name it initial user create, and then I'll update this migration to the database using these commands. This error occurs because the invariant globalization setting is true in the project settings file. We need to set this setting to false and then save it. Great, the migration was successful. You can now see the new TicTacToe user database created inside the SQL server. I almost forgot to add the key attribute to the ID of the user. Let me add the key attribute to the ID and then update the database again. Thank you for watching this video. In the next one, I'll explain user authentication and password hashing with .NET Core. Please stay tuned, and if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing to my channel and liking my videos.